The knock came at 3:12 a.m. It wasn't loud, just 3 soft raps on the old wooden door, but in a house that had been silent for weeks, it might as well have been an explosion. Maya's thin fingers tightened around the edge of her blanket. She hadn't walked in 2 days. The morphine by her bedside dulled the pain, but not the fear. And in that silence, in that stillness of dying, no one was supposed to come. Especially not him. She lay there, eyes wide, heart pounding with a kind of strength she hadn't felt in weeks. The wind outside howled, and for a moment she wondered if she'd imagined it. Hallucinations had become more frequent. The nurse had warned her. But the knock came again. 3 raps. This time, slower. She hadn't heard footsteps. No car. No gate opening. Just the knock. Dragging herself upright, slowly, shakily, she reached for the walker. Her breathing was shallow, but something stronger than pain moved her now. Not hope. Not fear. Something older. Like instinct. When she reached the door, she didn't open it right away. "Who is it?" she rasped. Silence. Then a voice. "Mom, it's me." She froze. That voice. She knew it like her own. The same voice that yelled at her 6 months ago. The same one that slammed the door and never came back. But something was wrong. It was his voice. But hollow. Strained. As if unsure of itself. "Daniel?" No answer. Just silence. And then, a whisper from behind the door. Soft. Almost not there. "I didn't know. I didn't know what I'd find." The doorknob turned, but she hadn't touched it. 10 hours earlier. The nurse had left at 5 p.m. "I'll see you tomorrow morning, Mrs. Langford. Try to rest tonight, okay?" she'd said, tucking in the edges of Maya's blanket like a child. Maya had smiled, as she always did. The nurse meant well. They always meant well. But there's a loneliness in dying that no professional kindness can reach. It's a private thing. A quiet thing. The house had been left in dim light. One lamp in the hallway, another beside the hospital bed. They had moved into the living room. The oxygen machine hummed like a tired old friend. Maya had stopped hoping. Not for a cure. Not for more time. That kind of hope dies first. But she'd still hoped he would come. Her only son. Daniel Langford. 34 years old. The last time she saw him, his eyes were full of rage. He had called her names, bitter, angry things she had never imagined hearing from her child. Words that pierced deeper than the cancer ever could. And then he was gone. No calls. No letters. No visits. For 6 months. And now, suddenly, a voice behind the door. Back to the present. Maya hesitated, her hand trembling on the doorknob. What if she was imagining it? What if her body, in its final stages, had begun playing tricks on her? She'd read about that, how the dying sometimes saw things, heard voices, relived memories. But hallucinations didn't turn doorknobs. She pulled the door open, just a few inches. And there he stood. Daniel. Thinner than she remembered. Pale. A little older looking than 6 months should have made him. His eyes were glassy, red-rimmed. He looked like someone who hadn't slept properly in weeks. "Daniel," she whispered. He didn't smile. He didn't speak. He just looked at her like he was trying to remember something. Or someone. Then, softly, he stepped inside. For a moment, she couldn't move. The cold night air followed him in, wrapping itself around her thin body like a shroud. He walked past her slowly, like someone entering a stranger's home. You came back," she said, unsure whether she was happy or afraid. He turned and gave a tight nod. I had to. Something in his voice sent a chill through her bones. Not because it was cruel, but because it was distant. Detached. Like he was answering a question from inside a dream. The tension grows. She followed him back into the living room, dragging her walker behind her. Daniel stood in the center of the room, staring at the hospital bed, the oxygen machine, the tray of medications on the table. You're worse, he said softly. She let out a weak chuckle. Well, I'm not getting better. He didn't laugh. Instead, he looked at the photo frame beside the bed, a younger Maya holding a baby. Daniel's baby photo. I don't remember this picture, he said. She blinked. Of course you do. You took it with you to college. You used to keep it on your desk. He shook his head slowly. No. I've never seen it before. Maya's fingers clenched around the edge of the walker. Daniel, what's going on? He looked up at her then, eyes dark, lost. I don't know. I feel like I've been somewhere. Like I've seen things I wasn't supposed to see. She took a shaky step forward. Where have you been all this time? He didn't answer. Secrets begin to surface. Later that night, as she lay in bed and Daniel sat silently in the armchair across from her, the silence thickened. Then he spoke. Quietly. There's something wrong with this house. She frowned. What do you mean? I don't know. I've had dreams, or memories. I don't know anymore. But they all lead back here. To this house. To you. And to that room upstairs. Maya stiffened. The room upstairs. It had been locked for years. No one goes in there, she said, her voice sharper than she meant. Not since your father died. Daniel stared at the ceiling. I think something happened in that room. Something I've forgotten. But it's coming back. She turned her face away. Her heart pounded louder than the oxygen machine. There's nothing in that room, she said firmly. But her voice trembled. A memory slips through. Around 4 a.m., Daniel stood up. I need to see it. Maya shook her head. No. Daniel, please. Let the past stay where it is. But he didn't listen. She couldn't stop him. He walked up the creaking stairs alone. And as she lay there, helpless in her bed, she heard the door upstairs creak open for the first time in 12 years. The air grew colder. Something shifted in the house. Something she had buried long ago, not just in memory, but in wood and walls and silence. And then, from upstairs, Daniel's voice echoed. Mom, there's a photo of me here, but I'm a teenager. And I'm standing with Dad. Only. I don't remember this. Maya's eyes filled with tears. Because she did. And she had prayed he never would. The stairs groaned under Daniel's feet. Dust hung in the air like breathless silence. The door to the upstairs room was wide open now, something that hadn't happened in over a decade. As he stepped into the dim hallway, a strange chill wrapped around his skin, prickling it like static. He rubbed his arms and stared at the door at the end of the hall. It hadn't been locked. Just ignored. Sealed not by bolts, but by years of silence. Inside the room, the air smelled like old paper and wood rot. The wallpaper was peeling. The curtains were half drawn, filtering in the blue of early morning. It didn't look like much. Just a forgotten space with boxes, an old dresser, a chair in the corner, and photographs. That's what stopped him. Photographs. Dozens of them. All carefully framed. Most were of him. As a child. As a teenager. One photo, the one he'd called down to Maya about, stood out most. In it, he was 15, standing next to his father. But here's the thing, Daniel had no memory of that day. None. He stared at his younger face, his father's hand on his shoulder, both of them smiling in front of the house. He didn't remember the smile. Or the day. Or the clothes. Or even the haircut. It felt fake. But it was him. He ran his hand over the frame. Behind him, a floorboard creaked. He turned, expecting Maya. But no one was there. Still, the room didn't feel empty. Downstairs, Maya's breath shortens. Back in her bed, Maya's chest rose and fell in rapid, shallow breaths. She stared at the ceiling, blinking hard against tears that threatened to spill. The sound of the upstairs door opening had shaken her. The fact that Daniel had remembered, or was beginning to, was worse than anything the cancer had thrown at her. She pressed the call button beside her bed, knowing it wouldn't do anything. The nurse wouldn't return until morning. But pressing it gave her something to hold on to. Some illusion of control. "Please," she whispered. "Don't remember. Not now. Not like this." But it was too late. Some memories, once unburied, come alive. Daniel finds the tape recorder. In the corner of the room, beneath a box of dusty books, something caught Daniel's eye. It was small, black, with tiny silver buttons, a cassette recorder. The kind his dad used to keep. He picked it up. There was a label on the back. Langford, 2009. That was the year his father died. His fingers trembled slightly as he pressed play. Static. Then, a voice. Not his father's. His own. Younger. Cracking with emotion. "I don't want to be here anymore. I can't sleep. I keep hearing him in the hallway. But Dad says not to worry. He says Mom doesn't need to know." Then silence. Then another voice, deeper, slower. "Some things are better left alone, son. We're doing what we have to." The tape clicked off. Daniel stood frozen. That voice, the second one, it was his father. But the message, it didn't make sense. Hearing things in the hallway? His father hiding things from his mother? His stomach twisted. Maya tries to rise. Maya had to stop him. She threw the blanket aside and struggled to sit up, gasping. Every joint screamed in protest. Her legs were weak, barely usable. But adrenaline pulsed through her now, not from fear of dying, but from fear of the truth. She forced herself to her feet, gripping the walker, dragging herself inch by inch toward the stairs. Her oxygen machine beeped angrily behind her, the tubing pulling tight with every step. Halfway across the living room, her legs gave out. She collapsed onto the floor with a dull thud. And from above, she heard Daniel call down. "Mom, why is there a child's drawing in this room, with my name on it, and a second name crossed out?" She wept. The drawing. Daniel sat cross-legged on the dusty floor, the drawing in his lap. Crayon lines. A crude stick figure family, a house, a man, a woman, and 2 kids. One child was labeled Daniel. The other name was scribbled over with thick black ink. So much ink the paper had torn. He flipped the paper over. On the back, a note written in adult handwriting. "This one never happened." What did that mean? Was it his drawing? Had he made it? If so, why didn't he remember? Why the second name? He opened another box. Inside, hospital bracelets, labeled Langford, dates from 2006. 2 of them. One with his birth date. The other, different. The brother that never was. He rushed downstairs, 2 steps at a time. Maya lay on the floor, pale, gasping, her hand reaching out toward him. "Mom, who was the other child?" Her eyes fluttered. There was no other child, she whispered. I found his bracelet. There was no other child, she shouted suddenly, her voice hoarse and cracking. Daniel stepped back, stunned. Why is his name blacked out in the drawings? Why was I told I was an only child? Maya's hands shook. Because that's the way it had to be. He wasn't like you. Who was he? She looked up at her son. Her face, lined with pain and age and regret, broke apart. Your brother's name was Michael, she said. He died. And we don't talk about him because. Because what? Because I don't think he ever really left this house. A chilling realization. Daniel stood frozen. What are you saying? He asked, barely breathing. Maya closed her eyes. When you were 6, something changed. You started waking up screaming. You kept saying you saw someone in the hallway. I thought it was nightmares. But it wasn't. No. She whispered. It wasn't. She tried to pull herself up, and Daniel rushed to help her back to the bed. I never told you the truth because you were too young. And when your father died, I thought it was over. That whatever we brought into this house, whatever we invited, was gone with him. What did you invite? He asked. Maya didn't answer right away. Then she said, your father was desperate. After Michael died, he tried things. Occult things. He wanted to bring him back. Daniel's blood turned to ice. Are you telling me? Dad tried to resurrect my brother? She nodded. And he succeeded. The beginning of the haunting. The last thing Daniel heard that night, before sleep took him like a trapdoor dropping out from beneath his feet, was the sound of scratching. From inside the walls. Light. Subtle. But unmistakable. Like fingernails. Or claws. Daniel didn't sleep that night. Not properly. Whenever his eyes drifted shut, something would jolt him awake. A sound, a whisper, a breath that didn't belong to him. The air in the house felt heavier now, thicker. It clung to his skin like sweat, even though the temperature hadn't changed. He sat on the edge of the armchair, eyes locked on the stairs. That room was open again. And something inside it felt aware. Down the hall, Maya lay still. She hadn't spoken since her confession. The name Michael hung in the air like smoke. A brother he never knew. A name he was never supposed to hear. But now that it had been spoken, everything was unraveling. Morning brings no peace. At sunrise, the nurse returned. She found Maya pale, weak, but conscious. Daniel sat near the bed, silent. Did you fall again? The nurse asked, alarmed. Maya nodded. Just dizzy. He helped me up. The nurse gave Daniel a warm glance. Good to see you, finally visiting. He said nothing. He wasn't visiting. He was trapped in something he didn't understand. The nurse didn't notice his tension. She adjusted the floor, checked Maya's pulse, fluffed the pillows, then made small talk. Maya barely responded. Daniel watched his mother's face, how she avoided looking at the ceiling. How she flinched every time the floorboards above creaked. She was afraid. Deeply afraid. The photo album. Later that day, Daniel went back upstairs. This time, he searched deliberately. He needed answers. The truth felt buried, not just in memory, but in things. Objects. Places untouched for years. In the bottom drawer of the dresser, he found it. A photo album. Worn leather, thick pages. He opened it slowly. The first few photos were familiar. Maya and his father on their wedding day. Pictures of the old house being built. Then baby photos of Daniel. And then. A page torn out. The edges were jagged. Ripped. He turned the page. The next photo made his chest tighten. A boy. About 6 years old. And the next. Michael. 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 And then, he was gone. No more pictures after the age of 6. Just empty pages. As if someone had stopped trying to remember. Maya confesses. That evening, when the nurse left, Daniel brought the photo album to his mother. He opened it and pointed to the boy. This is him, isn't it? Maya didn't answer. Her eyes welled with tears. Tell me, Mom. She nodded slowly. Yes. Why did you erase him from everything? Because I had to, she whispered. Because remembering him made him come back. Daniel frowned. That doesn't make sense. You don't understand, she said, voice cracking. After he died, it didn't stop. We still heard him. Saw him. Felt him. Not just in dreams. In this house. He was still here. But different. Daniel sat down. Tell me everything. The truth about Michael. Maya's voice was a whisper, each word weighed down by guilt and fear. Michael was born before you. 2 years before. Bright. Funny. But there was something different. Even as a toddler, he would stare into corners for hours. Talk to people who weren't there. We thought it was imagination. Until he started saying things. Dark things. Things no child should know. Like what? She swallowed. Once he told me he dreamed of a man under the house. A man with no face. He said the man whispered to him. Said he'd take someone soon. That it would be me. Daniel's skin crawled. And then? When he turned 6, he stopped sleeping. Started drawing things. Pages full of black scribbles. Circles and lines and symbols. Your father found some of them. Took them to a friend, a professor from the university. A man who knew things about the occult. Daniel leaned in. And? The professor said the symbols weren't just random. They were ancient. Warnings. Something about doors that should never be opened. Maya's hands trembled. We ignored it. Thought it was just coincidence. And then? And then one day. Michael vanished. The vanishing. Maya stared into the distance, eyes clouded. It was summer. He was playing in the backyard. I turned to answer the phone, and when I came back, he was gone. Daniel felt like the air had been punched from his lungs. No sounds. No screams. No signs of struggle. We searched for days. The police did everything. But there was nothing. Not even footprints. Until. Her voice faltered. Until what? 3 days later, we found his shoes. Inside the house. In the upstairs room. Placed neatly beside the dresser. And a drawing taped to the mirror. What was on the drawing? She looked him dead in the eye. You. The whispering. That's why your father started digging deeper. Trying to find a way to shut it out. And the rituals? They were desperate. Dangerous. We never talked about them. But after your father died, during one of the attempts, the house went quiet. For a while. Daniel stared at the ceiling. Until now. The basement door. That night, the scratching came back. But louder. And from below. The basement. Daniel hadn't been down there in years. It had always felt wrong. Cold, even in summer. As a child, he'd avoided it instinctively. But now he was drawn to it. As if something was calling. He grabbed a flashlight, walked past his mother's room, she was asleep, or pretending to be, and crept down the hallway. The basement door stood ajar. The flashlight flickered. He descended slowly. Each step creaked. The air grew colder. At the bottom, he paused. In the beam of the flashlight, something glinted on the far wall, symbols. Carved into the concrete. The same ones from Michael's drawings. Circles. Eyes. Slashes. Ancient marks. He stepped closer. There was something buried in the wall. A sealed panel. Fresh wood. Recently nailed shut. He reached for a crowbar from the corner. And began to pry it open. What he finds. Behind the panel was a space no bigger than a closet. And inside it. Bones. Small bones. A child's. Wrapped in cloth. Decayed. Forgotten. Daniel staggered back, gasping. Suddenly, the flashlight went out. And in the darkness, a voice whispered, inches from his ear. You weren't supposed to come back. Daniel stumbled backward in the dark, chest heaving. His hand trembled around the dead flashlight. Somewhere in the pitch-black basement, he could hear breathing. Not his. Soft. Ragged. And far too close. You weren't supposed to come back. He spun around, every muscle in his body tense. Who's there? He hissed. No answer. Just silence. Thick, suffocating silence that pressed against his ears like cotton soaked in water. Then the flashlight flickered back on. The bones were still there. But now, beside them, someone had... The voices stopped. You stopped waking up screaming. Daniel swallowed hard. He suddenly remembered something, a dream from when he was 5 or 6. He was standing in the basement. Watching his father hammer something into the wall. A cloth bundle. His mother crying. It hadn't been a dream. The therapist's note. The next morning, Daniel searched his father's old desk in the study. Amidst the old files and dusty notebooks, he found a small locked box. The key was taped underneath. Inside, a letter. Dr. Jensen's final notes, confidential. It was addressed to Maya. He unfolded the paper. The writing was hurried, ink blotched in places. After our final session, I believe Michael exhibited symptoms consistent with possession or dissociative identity trauma beyond anything I've encountered. The child claimed to speak to a presence calling itself the mirror. He would sometimes refer to himself as Daniel, even before your second son was born. You must consider the possibility that what you're dealing with isn't just grief or psychosis. Something entered your family through Michael. Something that's still watching. Still waiting. Daniel's heart stopped. Michael had called himself Daniel. Before Daniel was even born. The portrait. The hallway upstairs had always had a family portrait. Painted when Daniel was just a baby. Maya had it commissioned when his father got a big promotion. He stood before it now. Staring. Something was wrong. He'd walked past this portrait 1,000 times growing up, but today, it felt off. The eyes of the baby in the portrait didn't look like his. They were slightly lighter. The shape of the face, subtly different. The nameplate beneath read. Langford family, 1992. But Daniel was born in 1993. He leaned closer. The paint was cracked along the baby's face. He reached out, gently scratching at the corner. Beneath the top layer of paint, was another child's face. Not his. Michael's. Identity crisis. Daniel stared at his reflection in the bathroom mirror, sweat beading on his forehead. His mind reeled. What if everything he believed about himself wasn't true? What if he was never the second child? What if he was the first? And Maya had buried the truth? He returned to the dresser in the upstairs room. Ripped open drawers. Tossed aside blankets. Eventually, behind a false bottom panel, he found a birth certificate. The name: Michael Langford. Birth date: June 5, 1992. Mother: Maya Langford. Father: Peter Langford. No mention of another child. No Daniel. Just Michael. His legs gave out, and he sat on the floor, holding the paper. Who am I? The return of the nurse. That afternoon, the nurse came again. Her name was Lillian. Kind, always smiling. But this time, Daniel watched her more closely. She checked Maya's vitals, adjusted the machines, chatted softly, until Daniel caught her pausing at the hallway portrait. Something wrong? He asked. She turned, startled. Oh, no. It's just. She hesitated. I remember that painting, she said. Daniel blinked. You do? I used to babysit here. When I was in high school. Long time ago. Back when, there were 2 boys. Daniel's throat went dry. You knew Michael? She gave a sad smile. Sweet kid. Bit strange sometimes. Always asking strange questions. One night he told me he had a brother that lived behind his eyes. Thought it was his imagination. Daniel's voice shook. Did you ever meet the second brother? No, she said. I only babysat for a year. Then the family stopped calling. Heard later the boy died. It was all very sudden. Never knew they had another kid after that. Daniel didn't respond. He couldn't. Because maybe, they didn't. Maya's breakdown. That night, he confronted her. The room was dim, the oxygen machine hissing softly beside her bed. You need to tell me the truth. She didn't answer. He held up the birth certificate. There is no Daniel in the official records. Only Michael. So who am I? She looked at him with tears running silently down her cheeks. Are you afraid of the answer? He asked. She whispered, every day of my life. Then say it. I don't know, she sobbed. I don't know anymore. After the rituals, after the voices stopped, you changed. You were sweet. Innocent. We thought whatever darkness Michael carried had finally left. Her words trailed off. But now I wonder, she whispered, if it just took a new face. The possibility. Daniel sat outside that night on the back porch, watching the wind sway the overgrown grass. He thought about the dreams. The whispers. The way he never remembered much of his childhood before age 6. He remembered once, waking up in the middle of the night as a child, covered in mud. His parents frantic. He'd claimed he was sleepwalking. But what if it wasn't sleep? What if the original Daniel had existed? And something had replaced him? The basement again. At 3 a.m., the house creaked awake. Something moved in the walls. Daniel heard it, and this time, he followed. He descended into the basement one last time. The bones were still there. But now, there were footprints in the dust. Barefoot. Small. Leading toward the furnace. And next to the furnace, scratched into the metal. I live through you. He turned. And saw something. A figure. A child, no taller than his waist. Pale. Shadow-eyed. Standing silently in the corner. Not flesh. Not quite ghost. Daniel couldn't speak. The child looked up at him, and in a voice that was his own, said, "We were never supposed to be two." Daniel stood frozen in the basement. The flashlight hung loosely in his trembling hand, the dim beam catching only flickers of the figure before him. A child. Barefoot. Skin pale as candle wax. His face, Daniel's face. Or at least, a distorted version of it. Younger, hollow-eyed, yet unmistakably familiar. We were never supposed to be two. The boy repeated. His voice was soft, gentle even, but filled with an ancient weight. As though he carried centuries inside his small frame. Daniel's mind scrambled to grasp reality. Was he hallucinating? Dreaming? Who are you? His voice cracked. The boy tilted his head. Don't you remember? You've always felt it. The gap. The dreams. The things no one could explain. I'm the part you left behind. Daniel backed away slowly. His heartbeat was thunderous in his chest. Left behind where? Inside. The lights flickered overhead. Somewhere upstairs, something crashed. The boy stepped forward. Daniel didn't move. Couldn't. I waited. I stayed quiet when she rocked you to sleep. I watched you when you blew out birthday candles. I saw the girl you kissed in the garden. All mine. All stolen. I didn't steal anything, Daniel whispered. You took everything. The boy's eyes darkened. But now, I'm ready to come home. Rewriting memory. Daniel bolted upstairs, slamming the basement door shut. He pressed his weight against it, gasping for air, trying to stop his hands from shaking. What had he just seen? A ghost? A fragment of his own mind? Trauma finally surfacing? He locked the door and turned toward Maya's room. But she wasn't there. The sheets were tangled. The four disconnected. Her slippers were missing from beside the bed. He scanned the hallway. And there, etched into the wallpaper with something sharp, was a name. Michael. Beneath it, one word. Return. Daniel's knees weakened. Was his mother trying to leave the house? Or had something taken her? The forest path. Daniel followed footprints into the backyard. Morning light was barely cutting through the fog, casting long shadows across the damp grass. He remembered the old forest trail behind the house. His father had always warned him to stay away. Said it was unsafe, overgrown and unstable. But it was also where Michael had disappeared, all those years ago. The footprints led directly there. Daniel pushed through the brush, branches slapping his arms and face. Birds scattered. The deeper he went, the quieter the forest became. It felt like the air was thickening, wrapping around his chest like cords. Then he saw her. Maya. Sitting on the broken bench near the creek. Barefoot. Pale. And beside her, the boy. Still. Watching. Mom. Daniel called. She didn't turn. The boy looked up. His eyes glowed faintly under the canopy of trees. She remembers now, he said. What did you do to her? Daniel shouted. Nothing she didn't already do to me. Maya finally turned. Tears streamed down her cheeks. I thought I could bury it. But you can't bury what never died. Daniel moved toward them, but every step forward felt like sinking into mud. You were never alone, Maya said weakly. He was always, inside. The unseen years. Maya began to speak, voice trembling. After Michael disappeared, I carried you differently. You didn't smile the same. You cried at things he used to laugh at. You started drawing the same symbols. Whispering to walls. I thought I was just grieving, projecting. But you weren't Daniel. Not completely. You'd already been split. Daniel fell to his knees. What are you saying? That I'm him? No, she said. You're both. Two souls. One body. That's not possible. It shouldn't be. But after the rituals, the failed exorcism, your father believed the only way to contain it was to bind what remained. So he did. What did he do? He let Michael back in. The boy stepped forward, now just feet from Daniel. And I've been waiting ever since. The merge. Suddenly, the world tilted. Daniel's vision swam. The forest, the trees, the sky, they all blurred and twisted. His knees buckled. Then. He was standing in his childhood room. Alone. Except for the mirror. The old full-length mirror that had once hung on his wall. And in the reflection. Michael. Not the boy from the woods. But a teenager. His exact age. The mirror version of himself. He didn't move. Just watched. Daniel walked up to the mirror. You're not real. I'm more real than you. Then who am I? Michael smiled sadly. The version she could live with. Daniel touched the glass. It was warm. The choice. Michael's voice echoed in the room. There can't be two. The body can't hold both. One of us has to go. Go where? Back to where I was. The place behind the eyes. The silence. The dark. You're not sending me there. Then you'll have to choose. What if I don't? Then we both rot. Daniel pressed his palms against the glass. I don't want this. Michael nodded. Neither did I. Back to the creek. Daniel blinked, and the forest returned. The bench. His mother. But now, the boy was gone. Just Maya remained, holding something in her hand. A locket. She opened it. Inside, 2 tiny photos. Daniel. And Michael. This was all I had left. What do I do now? Daniel whispered. She looked at him, eyes hollow. You go back. And you decide. The fire. Back home, Daniel descended into the basement once more. He carried with him a can of gasoline and a box of matches. The bones were still there. The symbols. The furnace cold and open. He looked around the room. The walls seemed to pulse. The air shimmered. He could feel something inside him moving, shifting, fighting. He poured the gasoline. Lit the match. One of us has to end it. He dropped the match. Flames roared. The collapse. Fire spread rapidly. Smoke filled the house. Wood groaned. Windows shattered. Daniel helped Maya out just in time, coughing, dragging her across the yard as the house ignited behind them. Neighbors ran toward them. Sirens in the distance. He sat on the curb, watching the only home he'd ever known burn to ash. And inside, maybe a spirit. Maybe a memory. Maybe himself. 3 weeks later. Daniel sat in a motel room outside of town. Maya was safe in hospice care, declining but peaceful. He stared into the mirror. No whispers. No shadows. Just his reflection. But sometimes, when the light flickers, he sees something. A flicker of a boy behind his eyes. Smiling. Waiting. The motel room was quiet. Too quiet. Daniel Langford sat on the edge of the bed, elbows on his knees, eyes fixed on the mirror hanging on the wall. The reflection stared back, tired eyes, sunken cheeks, a jaw clenched from too many sleepless nights. No whispers. No ghostly figure of Michael. Not anymore. But the silence wasn't comforting. It was unfamiliar. Empty. For the first time in weeks, he was alone, truly alone. And that was the most terrifying thing of all. Maya's final days. The hospice was quiet. Sterile. Its white walls held the stories of countless farewells, most of them unspoken. Maya Langford lay still in her bed, her breaths shallow but steady. The doctors said it wouldn't be long now. Daniel sat beside her, holding her hand. She didn't open her eyes much anymore. But she squeezed his fingers weakly. "I saw him," she whispered one afternoon. "In the flames." Daniel didn't need to ask who she meant. He smiled at me. "The real one. My first boy. The one I lost too soon." "You didn't lose him," Daniel said. "He was always with us. Somehow." She turned her head slowly. "And you, Daniel? Or Michael? Whoever you really are, you stayed." "I stayed," he said softly. Her eyes welled with tears. "I'm sorry. For all of it." He wanted to say it was okay. But he didn't know if it was. So he just nodded. "I know." Letters never sent. In a worn shoebox by her bedside, Daniel found dozens of letters. All handwritten. All addressed to Daniel. Postmarked but never mailed. They dated back over 2 decades. One from 1999 read: "Dear Daniel. I don't know how to speak to you anymore. Some days you're joyful and full of light. Other days, it's like I'm staring into a storm. I pray this passes. I pray you find peace in your little body. But part of me is scared that whatever lived in your brother, never left." Another, from 2003. "You asked me today who Michael was. You had no memory of him. I cried in the kitchen. You hugged me and asked if I was okay. For a moment, I believed maybe the darkness was gone. That you were free. But that night, you drew his name on your window." Backward. Daniel read them all. Each one a thread pulled from a tapestry of a mother's guilt, fear, love, and desperation. In the final letter, dated just 6 months before his return, she wrote: "If you ever come back to this house, you'll find the truth. But promise me something: whatever you find, don't let it define you. You were always more than the thing we buried. You were always worth saving." Visiting the past. The house was gone. The fire had left behind only a hollow shell. Charred wood. Scorched stone. A roof that caved inward like a broken ribcage. Daniel stood at the edge of the property line, tape still flapping in the wind. He stepped over the ash, past the place where the front door had once stood. Beneath the ruins, he could still feel it, the weight of memory. He crouched near what used to be the basement entrance. And there, in the soot, something glinted. A locket. His mother's. He picked it up, wiped it gently. Still intact. Inside were the 2 faces, Daniel and Michael. And suddenly, it hit him. The real truth. He wasn't the second child. He never was. He was the only child, born after Michael died. But somehow, Michael had never left. Not fully. His mother had tried to bring him back. Rituals. Mediums. Desperate cries into the dark. And something had answered. Whether it was Michael's real spirit or something darker wearing his face, it had come back and taken root in Daniel's mind. Not as a separate soul. But as a shadow. A second consciousness. The drawings. The whispers. The flickers in the mirror. They weren't hauntings. They were memories. Shared memories. The fire had burned the house, and the presence, away. But the pain remained. Confronting the mirror one last time. Back at the motel, Daniel stared into the mirror again. Not waiting for a ghost. Not afraid of what might look back. But searching. "Michael," he whispered. No reply. Just silence. But Daniel spoke anyway. I know now. I know who I am. I'm not your replacement. I'm not your jailer. I'm your brother. I wish I could have known you. I wish I could have grown up beside you. Laughed with you. Fought with you. Been stupid teenagers together. But that chance was taken from both of us. His throat tightened. I forgive you. I hope, wherever you are, you can forgive me too. The lights didn't flicker. There was no chill in the air. Just warmth. And quiet. Closure. Maya passed away 3 days later. Peacefully. In her sleep. Daniel sat with her afterward, reading the final lines of her journal. Her handwriting was shaky, but her words were clear. I don't know what Daniel will become after this. But I know he's strong. He carries 2 lives in his chest, his and his brother's. That burden is heavy. But maybe it will also make him kinder. Wiser. Braver than the rest of us. If there is an afterlife. I hope I see them both again. I'll know them by the eyes. Daniel closed the journal and kissed her forehead. For the first time, he didn't cry. Not out of coldness. But out of quiet understanding. 1 year later. Daniel now worked at a center for trauma recovery and child grief therapy. He didn't tell clients everything. But sometimes, when the timing was right, he'd share a story. About a boy who was both someone, and someone else. A boy who lived with a shadow. And learned to live despite it. Final twist, a letter from the fire department. One morning, he received a letter from the fire department's investigation unit. They had combed through the remains of the Langford house after the blaze. Inside a metal furnace, where Daniel had poured the gasoline, they found something unexpected. The object recovered is believed to be a child's femur, unburnt, wrapped in cloth, tucked deep in the vent. It did not match your DNA. We also discovered evidence of an additional sealed cavity behind the east wall, containing remnants of what appears to be an old children's bed frame and a tattered drawing labeled Daniel. The drawing appears over 25 years old. Daniel stared at the page. His heart pounded. Could it be? Was there ever a real Daniel? Or had Michael not been the one who returned, but the one who stayed? Final reflection. We all carry shadows. Memories. Versions of ourselves we no longer recognize. But what if some of those shadows aren't ours? What if the haunting isn't outside, but inside? Behind the eyes. And what if, just maybe, the ghosts we run from are the ones who still remember us?